Hello legends and super legends, welcome to Veloharmony. Today I want to talk about average speed. Is it important? What's the big deal behind average speed? The reason I'm bringing that up is I've been getting a lot of direct messages on Facebook and some of them through YouTube messaging here, some of the legends on here, and some of the visitors to my Facebook and Twitter pages have been asking about improving average speed and so forth. So some of them I've directed to go to veloharmony.com and sign up for our personal training so we can give them the structured training they need to get them faster. But what I wanted to do today was talk about the significance of average speed. Average speed is kind of a red herring. Don't train to average speed. It means bupkis. Here's why. Okay, you're riding down the road, you're in a 39, 17, whatever gear you're spinning at, say 80, 85, 95, whatever your cadence is. And that day, the wind is behind you. So you're moving along, say at 19, 20 miles an hour in a moderate, like a 65-inch gear, which is about probably a 39, 16 or something like that. And you're moving along and your same route you always do. And that day you just blitz through your route and you had an average of 17 or 18 miles an hour, and you uploaded your Garmin or you wrote in your training diary, however you do it, and you see that your average speed was high. And then the next day you go, weather comes in, the wind's in your face, same route, and you're in the same gear, same cadence. Okay? What's going to happen is it's going to be harder, first of all, to keep the cadence at 90, 95, whatever you did on the other ride, because the wind's in your face now. So what's going to happen? You're going to either have your cadence fall from the cadence that it was before because that wind's blowing, or you're going to downshift in order to keep your cadence in the same range that you're comfortable with. So let's assume you're one of these disciplined riders. You got a coach, he's giving you your plan and he's giving you your zones to be in. And so you're like, oh, I got to make sure I keep my cadence in there because I'm working on speed today. So let's say you're one of our super legends like CV Rivera who knows what he's doing. And he's like, you know what? I don't give a crap about this wind. I'm going to just downshift. I'm going to stay at 95 and just keep my cadence in. What's going to happen when you get home? Your average speed is not going to be the same. It's going to be lower. So fast forward. What does that mean? Does that mean that you didn't improve or it was a lousy ride? No, that's the problem with average speed. Because the wind was in your face, you traveled slower, okay? It didn't mean that you did any less work, because if you know what you're doing and you were in the right zones for your engine, that's what's significant. And that's what I've been trying to get to. So focus on the zones that you need to train in, okay? I know they got a lot of things on the internet where, I even made a video where I was talking about how you find threshold and so forth to calculate your zones and what you need to stay in. And that's assuming that you're doing the heart rate based training. If you're doing power based training, we also work with people that use power meters to where we can help you get your zones. The key is that you have to identify your zones, but you have to be flexible to make sure that you adjust those zones accordingly. Because as you get fitter, the zones will change. So don't get too hung up on the numbers. That's why I like to also incorporate RPE, the rate of perceived exertion. I made a video about that because you can blend those and say, yeah, I'm feeling like I'm in zone 2. So you have to have a program that focuses on giving you the particular zone to be in. If you're preparing for a Grand Fondo or you're working on improving your Strava time or whatever, every ride has to have a purpose. If you're just going out for fun to enjoy your ride, then it doesn't really matter. You just go out and you ride your bike. And so who cares about average speed at that point? So the point I'm trying to make is, unless you have a plan to know how hard to push your engine each day and have a plan to know when to rest your engine, it's kind of hard to improve, because you have to work hard enough to stress your body and rest enough so that your body can improve. And that's how you get faster. You can't just go out and just ride every day and ride blindly and mix and match zones and whatever and expect to improve, because you're just all over the place. There's no focus. So the riders that have focus improve faster than those that don't. And so those of you who are not sure, don't have a plan, you don't have a book that you trust, contact us. Go to veloharmony.com, sign up for one of the personal training. We'll customize something for you and just have you pay for what you need, because everybody has different needs. Somebody may need an annual plan, somebody may need a 90-day plan or a 180-day plan. I don't really give out plans until after I get to know the riders, because it's made for you. We got to know what you've been doing, where you're at, and then we make a plan that will get you to the next level because it's specific for you. So today what I wanted to focus on is forget about average speed. Quit worrying about what your average speed was on the last ride versus today, because the conditions are always different. I mean, even if you're not doing the same course, think about it. If one day you rode a flat course and the next day you rode the hills, how are you going to compare average speeds? Even if you rode the hills all the time, the next time you ride the hills, you don't know what's going on. You don't know how hot it's going to be. You don't know how the wind is. You don't know what your body's going to be doing. So it's more consistent to focus on how hard you're working versus how fast you traveled the route. Now, the other thing I want to add is a lot of people, I rode, we did a century. I rode with a group and we were really killing it. And we did the century in 4.5 hours. That wasn't you. It was the group. Same thing with the group rides. When you're with the group, you travel faster. Here's why. The obvious thing that we all know is you're in the draft. When you're in the draft, you will be working at lower zones for a faster speed, because you're working at 30% or so less effort than you would if you were riding alone. The second thing people don't talk about very often is, and this is the laws of physics, I didn't make it up. When someone is drafting you, you go faster, believe it or not. That is a scientific fact. When you're riding along at 18 miles an hour solo, you're doing 18 miles an hour, you're using more watts solo than if a guy was drafting you. You might save a little bit of watts, not as much as when you're in a draft, but the fact that someone's drafting you, there's something about the turbulence that the wind creates, that person behind you takes that turbulence away that you would normally have if nobody was back there, that propels you a little faster than if you were solo. So you benefit in a group from two ways: from being in the draft and having somebody drafting you. So don't get hung up on the average speed you have when you're in a group or a race or whatever. That's not yours. Your speed is when you're solo. And that's why average speed means nothing to gauge performance. So just throw it out. Forget about it. Focus on how hard did I work in zone 2 or zone 4, and for how long? How long did I stay in this zone today? Did I stay in this zone for an hour comfortably, or was I dying? That's how you gauge your improvement. Did I manage to stay in this zone for 35 minutes in zone 5 today versus the last time I tried to stay in zone 5 where I could only do 10 minutes. That's how you know you're improving. Now, how you get to improve your tolerance in those zones is based on very specific training. And that's the thing where I talked about in the video I made with Peter Sagan and Chris Froome from the Tour de France video, where I just narrated and talked about, power, the display of power. Well, I was talking about the fact that you can't just go out and say, okay, I'm just going to blast away and then everything should just fall into place. It doesn't work that way. My narration in that video showed that it was tactical power, meaning they went hard, but the timing was there, okay? If they had not trained to where they could stay at what we call full gas for the time that it took them at the end of that race, they would have been caught easily. So when you go out and you're training and you have not spent, say, 15, 20 minutes in zone 5 or zone 4, I don't care whether you're spinning at 95 or whatever, you've got your cadence down or whatever. If you're riding with a group that puts you in that zone that you have not trained in and keeps you in there for that duration, you're going to have problems. That's why I say if you're riding with a group that's too fast, sometimes you got to let them go. You have to focus more on, instead of average speed, focus on the time you're spending in each zone. If you're going out to do some training for, let's say, an upcoming touring that you're going to do or an upcoming Grand Fondo, figure out how long you can stay in zone 2, your endurance zone. First of all, you got to know what your endurance zone is. Okay? Once you figure that out, okay, I've got to be able to do on one day of the week while I'm preparing, I've got to be able to stay in zone 2 for 3 hours, if that's how long the Grand Fondo will be. What that will do for you is the fact that you know that you can do the duration. So let's say you don't have 3 hours. Do at least half. Do an hour and a half. If the Grand Fondo is going to be 3 hours, you need to be able to ride for at least an hour and a half in the zone you plan to use in that Grand Fondo. You may go a little faster when you get to the Grand Fondo, but when you're training, your endurance ride should be at least 50% of the time. So the key is the zone and the time. Forget about average speed. Nobody cares about that. Your body does not care how fast you're going. Your body cares about how hard it's working and for how long. And with that, I'm going to end the video because that's all I wanted to focus on. So don't get too excited about people talking about, oh, my average speed was this. It means nothing. 2 hours into a headwind might take you, you might be moving at 15 miles an hour into a headwind. And in 2 hours, you may only cover 30 miles. That's like 50 kilometers because the wind slowed you down. Well, whereas in a tailwind at the same effort, you may cover twice that distance. So don't worry about it. You know, the conditions dictate what speed you get and what average speed and whether you're in a group or solo. So going out and riding solo and being worried about average speed, it's counterproductive because you're not going to average 23 miles an hour every ride. That's not the goal. You need to have a ride where you have a purpose for recovery. You have a ride where you have a purpose for endurance. You have a ride where you have a purpose for threshold. You have a ride where you have a purpose for intervals over and under threshold. You go out and do a hard interval ride. Your average speed may be nothing, but the work that you did will prepare your engine that when you need to go fast, you will be able to go fast for the duration. So you have to know how to train. You can't just go out and say, I'm going to stay in zone 5 for 20 minutes. You have to build up to that. You have to know how to do little intervals that build your tolerance to be able to stay in those high zones. You know, and that's why people either get a very good book or they get a program and they understand how to train. And everybody takes for granted, just like fit, that, well, I'll just go out and ride and I'll get better. Yeah, you'll get slightly better, but there's always going to come a time that when the hammer really goes down, if you have not fine-tuned yourself, you will not be able to stay with the top guys. I mean, we're talking about, top percentage training. That's why people that use power meters, they only use that to get that little extra percentage after. They don't ride around with power meters all the time. People who are in the know anyway, because they don't waste their battery or whatever. A lot of them just, they get tired of training with power meters all the time and only take it out when they're trying to eke out that little extra performance for some event that they're getting ready for. So I'm going to wrap up just saying that quit worrying about your speed, your average speed for the ride. And if your goal is to just go out and enjoy the ride, pay attention, look at the trees, enjoy the birds and whatever. If your goal is to go out there to say, I want to tune my engine to be able to handle changes in different zones and different efforts, then depending on what your focus is for that ride, go out there and focus on making sure you hit those zones. And before I wrap up, I want to just stress that. Take, for example, one of my biggest supporters on this channel, Russell Baker, one of the first guys that signed up early, one of the early guys that when the channel was a baby coming along, he expressed the fact that he prefers to ride indoors. I mean, I ride indoors. I have my trainer right here. I ride indoors just when it's convenient. If I got a crazy day, I don't worry about going outside. So look at it this way. If you're riding indoors all the time, like I do, or Russell does, or a lot of serious riders that come home late from work, who cares what average speed says on that thing? You're not fighting any win. You're not doing whatever. Nobody cares about that. You get on that trainer. It's so dull to ride indoors anyway. So a lot of times we might turn on the news or whatever, or some people will have a workout video, or I have a program. I have a program where I warm up for a certain amount of time. Then I give it a stick for a certain amount of time. Then I have my recovery. By the time I get through my program, I'm done. It might be 45 minutes. I'm done. So there's no boredom because I have a focus. So I don't really care what the average speed is. What I care about is, did I hit my numbers? Did I hit those zones? Was I able to get my body into those zones? And Russell has said, the reason I brought up Russell had come to the channel and commented, and he said, you know, I'm paraphrasing. He said, I couldn't get the zone 4 and this and that. You know, I was trying to get the zone 4, and how do you make sure that you get the zone 4? And that was before I started doing the videos on cadence or whatever. And that was his comment that prompted the start of the focus of some of the videos on cadence. So you have to make sure, whether you're indoors or outdoors, the cadence you're using is allowing you to hit your numbers. If you're muscling a huge gear, chances are your legs are going to get tired before you even get to those zones if the gear is too hard. So keep that in mind. So it's very important that you focus more on, what do I want to do with my engine for the event I'm training for, as opposed to what the average speed says. That means nothing. Because when you get to that event, if you get with a group, the group will dictate your average speed. And what's going to be more significant is whether you have trained enough to where you can now handle the cadences you need to handle, the gearing you need to handle to stay with that increased speed of the group. Because look at it this way, the group will be going faster, but because if you're smart and you've practiced how to draft, because you're drafting, you will be able to stay in lower zones at the faster group speed if you draft smart. And maybe I'll do a video about that as far as drafting, because I don't want to get too far off topic. So let me wrap up by saying, forget average speed and focus on building your engine for the event you're going to do. And if you need help on how to build your engine for your particular event, how to get a good book, go to our website, send me an email. We can put a program together for you. And there are different packages that we offer. We can customize the packages, because I don't give people programs until I get to know their stats, because they're customized for you. Because there are programs galore on the internet or wherever, but they don't know you. They don't know where you are. They don't know whether you just started, what you've been doing. So it doesn't really represent the focus you need. So we get to know you, and then we dial your program to where within a few weeks of doing it, you see marked improvement if you do the work. So with that, I'm going to wrap up by saying, no matter what, get your miles in.